So I'm going to talk about these two new features, Timeline and Cinemachine. Timeline is mostly to create sequences, so cutscenes, while Cinemachine is like a complete tool to create camera rigs. I'm going to show you how. When we talk about cutscenes, one thing I want to mention is when we mention the word cutscenes, we usually think about something that plays, especially in the beginning of the game or a level, right? So we have I call it timeline because it's the name we give it in Unity. So the hero wakes up, there's this sequence playing, and then the gameplay starts, and he starts performing actions, so the player has control. But we can also have cutscenes that are an intermission, so the hero is doing something, the player is playing, and then the cutscene starts, the control is taken away, and then the cutscene finishes, the control is given back to the player, and the hero, so the hero explores, the boss appears, and then the hero goes back to gameplay and fighting a boss. But you can also think of cutscenes as something that plays in the background, so you can have gameplay that goes on uninterrupted, and then timelines that play in the background. So for example, at the same time as the hero is exploring a house, so the player is exploring a house, there's an NPC that enters the house. Then after a while, the NPC starts talking with the hero, but the player is still playing there. And then you can even think of a timeline that controls like weather. So there's a rainstorm going outside with lights, animated lights, animated sound, and animated particles. And that's a timeline that maybe loops several times, right? So multiple timelines can play together. So how does timeline look? This is how it looks. It's basically, a classic timeline interface, as you would see them, in Adobe products or, any kind of film editing software. It's a new feature built in Unity, which is going to debut in 2017.1, which is the next version, which is in beta now. It's a new feature to sequence cutscenes for your games or films or anything else. And it can control animation, audio, particles, and more. When I say more, it's because apart from the default tracks that you can have in Timeline, like the ones you see there, you can use a set of APIs to extend the functionality and create new tracks and new clips to control basically whatever you want in the game. Stupid example, you can have an AI system for your enemies, and the AI has a bunch of things that it can do, a bunch of actions. You could use it as an AI for the game, but you could also plug it into Timeline and sequence some actions, right? And then have the enemy perform something scripted. If you create a custom track with this playable API that I was mentioning. The other feature I'm going to take a look at is called Cinemachine, and it's a complete tool to create camera rigs and controls for different view scenarios. So whenever you need a camera for cutscenes or also for gameplay, you can use Cinemachine. It's an asset that was available on the asset store already before, but then Unity acquired it, so now it's available for free. You can get it for free now. But in future versions of Unity, it's going to be completely integrated. So it's going to be part of the editor. You don't need to download it anymore. It integrates automatically with existing Unity camera setups. So if you have already a camera in your game, I'm going to show you. It's really easy to put Cinemachine in without touching the camera. And it also integrates with Timeline. So it plays well if you want to create a cutscene. All right, this is how Cinemachine looks like. There's a menu, and then as soon as you add a virtual camera, then it will give you some kind of component, and we're going to take a look at them. So let's see a practical example. I'm going to take a look at the second case that I spoke about. So a situation where I have gameplay, which is interrupted by some cutscene, and then gameplay resumes. So I'm going to go into the Unity editor. Okay, see, I know why. Okay, so for this demo, I'm going to use the assets from this game, which is called Ghost of a Tale. You can see the logo here. It's a game that's in development. It's currently, I think it's in early access, and it's available on Steam. The developer allowed us to use the assets to demo Timeline and Cinemachine. So for the demo, I'm going to use the character which is this mouse called Ciro. As you can see, I can walk around with the mouse. Isn't he cute? I can run. I can sneak. So he has a complex animator state machine that powers this behavior, right? It blends together the walking animation, the idle animations, depending on what I do. And the state machine looks really complex. It's not the topic of this talk, but just to give you an example, if I go into the mouse and I select the animator, yeah, this is how it looks. It's like quite complicated. It has states and substates. You see idle, then we go into idle, and idle has different animations depending on the speed that the mouse has. So it's a really complex state machine. So as you can see now, the camera work is not really interesting. The camera is a fixed point of view. I'm not going to play the game like this. I need a dynamic camera. So I'm going to use Cinemachine straight away. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to create a free look camera. Now, as soon as I create it, as you can see, apart from the message that you get, I got it, you're looking at an empty space because the camera is not set up. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to bring it here to virtual cameras just to make the hierarchy more tidy. And I'm going to also disable the guides. I'm going to show you what the guides are in a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you see I added this game object. It's not actually a camera. If you look at the inspector, it's just a component which has a bunch of options. The camera, as I said before, stays the one that you created in the beginning. So this camera here, main camera, is still the camera I'm going to use. And Cinemachine is going to pass the camera around to the virtual cameras to create to get the shot I want. So that's interesting because you don't need to duplicate cameras and, maintain all of them, because all your cameras can have like several components. So it's unpractical to have multiple cameras. But Cinemachine just uses one and then passes it around to the virtual ones. But Cinemachine adds one component to the camera, which is this one, the Cinemachine brain, which is the component that thinks and decides which camera shot to use at a certain point. Right now, as you can see, it's using the free look because it's the only one that's in the scene. So back to the free look, as you can see, it's a pretty long component, and it has three important sections, which are top rig, middle rig, and bottom rig. And what so let me connect in here at the top, look at and follow. I'm going to connect the mouse itself. No, actually I'm going to connect the mouse prefab. So if I connect it here, as soon as I do it, as you can see, now the camera is looking at the mouse, and if I press play, it's following and it's looking at the mouse. But it's looking at the mouse base because I connected it to the root of the prefab, so it's looking at his feet. And as I move the mouse up, and like the mouse cursor, up and down, I already have this camera that blends between top, middle, and bottom position. But right now we're looking at the feet, which is not the best view, right? So I'm going to focus on something else, and I want to show you. So in the editor, this is how the Cinemachine looks, the free look camera. As you can see, it's a camera, and it has three circles: the top, mid, bottom rig, that I can adjust. And then the camera travels, on those circles, and as I move down, it blends to the other circle and to the bottom one. And I can control the three independently. So, and as you can see, each one can have a look at and a follow property. So what I'm going to do, instead of looking at the mouse prefab, I'm going to remove this property here. I'm going to look at different spots depending on the height of the camera. So for the top rig, I'm going to look at the pelvis. For the middle rig, I'm going to look at the chest. And for the bottom rig, I'm going to look at the head. Voila. So now I press play. And now I have a way better point of view. So if I'm at the top, I'm looking at the pelvis, then it blends to the chest, and then it goes to the head. So if I'm walking like this, I can have a view of what's above the mouse. Right? If I move the mouse cursor left or right, the camera rotates, and if I move it up and down, it blends between the three circles. And I can adjust the three circles independently, as I said. But as you know, I don't adjust them in play mode. I need to exit play mode, so I can make my adjustments. For example, the field of view of the top, I want it to be larger. To preview this, you can control here the axis, so you can go from 0, which is bottom, to the top. And I can see, now I'm looking at the top rig, and I can adjust the field of view. Maybe don't exaggerate. The middle rig will be something like 46, and this will be 40. And I can adjust, if I go into the body, I can adjust the circles. So as you can see, I can make the circles like tighter or larger. And then the interesting stuff, which is kind of like the heart of Cinemachine, is this aim module. So if I open the aim module, I can have two properties. I can have hard constraint, which means that camera will look at the object I gave it in the look at property with a hard constraint, so it will always look at that. Or I can have composer, and composer is the guides that I hid before, so I'm going to enable them again. And as you can see, the yellow dot is the objects I'm looking at, and then I have some guides, which are probably difficult to see in the on the projector, but as I adjust them, they reveal, this like central area, which is basically these parameters here, the soft constraints. So this central focus area is a tolerance area. The yellow object is the objects I want to focus on, and then as the objects move and goes outside of the tolerance, the camera is going to follow it. So it's going to try to follow as if it were like a virtual camera operator, trying to frame a subject in every moment. And you can set soft constraints, and then you have the hard constraints, which to tell Cinemachine the object doesn't have to go outside of this frame. You can keep following it, but it doesn't go out. I'm not going to set them now because it's not worth now. But as you can see, I can set the aim for the top, then I can set a different aim for the middle and a different one from the bottom, or I can have them the same. But it's interesting. You can create like some kind of really cool setups. I'm going to show you. So as I play, and I'm looking from the top, the mouse moves. It's maybe difficult to perceive now, but there's like a slight delay in the focus. I'm going to show you better when we create an animation, a cutscene. Another interesting feature of Cinemachine is the noise. As you can see, each module here has the noise property. I'm not going to use it now, but it basically can add some noise to the camera itself. So apart from the camera movement, the camera can be shaky somehow. And you can use it to simulate, for example, think of you're framing like a big vehicle or a tank, and you're going very near the tank, then the camera shakes. But as you move away from it, so you're using the top circle, then you can reduce the noise. So you can apply noise only to the middle or the bottom rig, but no noise at the top. So as you can have like this kind of feeling that you're getting closer to a very loud engine by adding shake to the camera, and it's all automatic. As you can see, like this doesn't require any programming. You can obviously extend all of these, like the usual way. Like you can access all the properties and change them at runtime. But for now, like we're not programming anything. It's all like in the component. So now that I have this rig set up, I'm going to create the cutscene. So for the cutscene, I'm going to move the mouse to the 0. scene. Oh yeah, so how do I create a cutscene? You go to Window, first thing, and you go to, what is it? Timeline Editor. And Timeline Editor will open a new panel which looks a bit like the animation panel. It's empty now because I have no timeline, and I'm going to create one. So timelines are assets, and they live in the project. They're like scriptable objects, if you want. So I'm going to go to the root of the project, and I'm just going to create one here. And I go to Create, Timeline, Timeline. This creates a new asset. I'm going to rename it like Mouse. And I think the recording software quit. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, it's back. Yeah? Yeah. All right, so the mouse timeline that I just created, as I said, is a scriptable object. To use it, I just drag it to the hierarchy, and it will create a new object, game object. The game object will have a component which is called playable director, which already has the timeline connected. So the playable director is a component that plays a timeline. And when I select the object and I go to the timeline editor, then I can see the timeline, which for now it's empty. But I'm going to add a new track. So for the first thing, I'm going to add an animation track, and I want to animate the mouse. So I'm going to animate the mouse, I need to connect the object, and I need to connect the object that has the animator. So it's this one. I connect it to the timeline. And now that it's connected, I can add clips. And clips, I can add basically, animation clips from the project that were created for this model. So I'm going to use this one, which is called Greetings, or Greeting. And as you can see, now I have the clip on the timeline, and as I scrub the timeline, he will play the animation. So this is a timeline that plays automatically. As you can see here, the option says play on awake, which means that basically, if I move this clip here and I press play, while I'm playing, he will greet at some point, and then resume like the normal state machine as I showed you before. So this timeline obviously plays only once because I didn't set it to loop. The problem here is that it jumps to the greeting animation. So what I can do is I can set ease in and ease out times, so it blends with. So basically, the animator state machine is playing, and then the timeline is playing, and as soon as the clip starts, it blends into the greeting, and then it goes back into the animator. So as you can see, let's see if I can show you. So he's moving around, and then he greets. The only problem is that when he greets, he also slides, because I can still control it. But this is like a very basic example of how you use a timeline. Obviously, with this clip, you can move it around. You can also make it longer, and it will loop. But let's, so when I blend it, as you can see, it will do this weird thing, because basically it's blending with a state that he doesn't know, like timeline doesn't know which state the state machine is in, because the game is not playing. So when it's when the game is not playing, you will see this weird behavior. It blends with like a default pose when it looks like he's hidden in the ground. But if I press play, then everything works as I just showed you. Hello. Let's now create a more complex timeline. So this timeline, as I said, it plays when I press play, but I don't want that. I want the timeline to start, as I showed you in the presentation, when there's gameplay, and then I perform an action, the timeline plays, and then gameplay resumes. So how am I going to do this? I have an object here, which is this interactive chest, which is two things. It's a trigger, and it has an actual chest. So the trigger is set up, it has a script that basically plays the timeline when I hit the button. So for example, let me delete this game object with the timeline now, and I'm going to use the one in the chest. So the chest also has a playable director. I connect the timeline that I want to play. And instead of being playing on wake, it's going to be triggered by this script here, which I created. So if I press play now, oh, and there's one last thing I have to do before. So because the timeline, this timeline here, this object, is a scriptable object that's in the project, he has no knowledge of objects in the scene. Why is this? Because I could use it in multiple places in the same scene, and I need to connect the timeline to different objects. So let me show you. If I open the timeline editor, as you can see, the timeline still has the clip that I created, but here the object is not connected anymore. I need to reconnect the mouse. And this is because I could have two timelines that are pointing to different objects, but play the same stuff on them. It's like a case that could be useful to create some specific animations. Because as I told you, like, there can be more than one timeline playing at the same time in the scene. So I reconnected the mouse, and now if I press play and I move around, as you can see, as I enter the area, it says press Y to interact. If I press Y, then he plays the animation, and then he goes back. And I can play it multiple times. So now comes the fun part. Let's create a cool animation. So I'm going to, instead of destroying the timeline and creating a new one, I'm just going to mute this track. So I don't want to use this clip anymore. I can mute the track, and then this track is not going to be playing. And I add the new ones. So I can add another animation track. I'm going to connect the mouse again because I need to tell timeline which object to apply the animation to. And I'm going to use other clips. So I have, I think it was open chest, which is this one. So as you can see, the mouse opens the chest. Then I have, oops. Hide in basin, which is the mouse jumping in the chest. And here already I have a problem because these two clips were not made to fit. Like as I go through the gap, you see there's like this jump because he opens the chest, but then he makes like a small jump, and then the hide in basin clip has another jump. So I need to blend them together. What I want to do here is I'm going to go where he's finished opening. He pulls down the arm. And then around here, I want to blend in the other clip. So I just drag it. And then a blend is automatically created. I can also reduce this blend a little bit, maybe. So, he opens the chest, and then he jumps directly. So I can continue like adding other clips. I can hide in basin. No, I think it was idle hidden in basin. As you can see, there's like 1,000 clips in the project. And again, like I can blend them a little bit together. It's always good to like blend 5 or 6 frames, because then they're gonna play nicely. This is a very long clip. I'm gonna trim it, because otherwise the timeline is going to be super long. And then I'm going to use, I think, exit basin. And I blend it a little bit. As you can see, because I'm blending, I don't need to care too much about, because this idle animation, right? It has a long animation, he's looking around, he's moving the ears. But because I'm blending, I don't really need to care where I'm cutting, because it will be blended with the exit. So let's take a look in the game. And the other thing I need to do is this script, this custom script that I created. I have checkboxes to disable the input and to move the player to a specific position, because as I enter this volume, I could be anywhere, but the animation plays nicely only if I'm in front of the chest, so I need to move it in front of the chest. So let me show you the result until now. So as you can see, I'm moving around. I have this free look camera. Then I move here, I press Y. He opens the chest. He jumps into the chest. He plays the idle animation. And then he moves out. And then the timeline is over. And I can repeat it. As you can see, I'm still controlling the camera. I can still like move around. And as I said, like Cinemachine tries to keep the, for example, if I'm very low, it tries to keep the head in the frame. So there's this like camera operator that's trying to follow the head as soon as it makes like these sudden movements. The next thing I can do is I can animate the actual chest. So if I'm gonna enable it, that's how it looks, and it has an object which is the lid. But the lid has, I don't have any pre-made clip for the lid. So I need to animate it by hand. Another interesting thing you can do with Timeline, as you can see, as I select the lid, I lose focus here. The timeline is not shown anymore. So what I can do is when I select the chest and I see the timeline, I can click on this small lock icon, and then Unity will lock onto the timeline even if I unselect the object. So I'm going to select the lead now. What I do is I add another track, another animation track, like before, and I connect the lead. I'm going to say to the timeline, animate this object. But instead of using a pre-made clip, because I have none, I'm going to record animation by hand. So I'm going to press the record button, and then I scrub through the timeline up to the point where the mouse is opening the chest. So it's ready to open. I go to the lid, and I'm going to add a key to the X rotation. So the chest is now keyed at 0, and then as he raises his hand, I'm going to key at -22, which is a value that's okay for this lead, I guess. So as you can see, it's animated, and then I need to go to the end of the timeline when he's coming out, and as he comes out, I can go to the lead, keyframe again, and as he goes out, I will put it at 0. So I have the opening and closing animation. There's one problem, which you can see. It's a funny side effect of rotations. Who knows how this is called? Gimbal lock. It's like it's a problem when you're using Euler calculation of angles. The way we can adjust it is if I go to the, so I'm on timeline, right? But I can, because I have an animation track, I can jump to the animation timeline, the animation panel by clicking here, Edit in Animation Window, and Unity passes the keys to the animation window, and now I can see the keys in here. I can move them, I can scale them, I can, see them as curves as well, and that's what's happening. It's jumping, from -22 to like 380 or something. So what I need to tell here is just tell Unity that to interpolate this key, it needs to use quaternions. And then, as I go back to the timeline, it will play nicely. But that's just a side effect of rotations. It's like a classic problem. So yeah, I can jump, as I said, from timeline. I have the keys here. I'm adding new ones to the animation panel to edit them. Or I can also see them here in a simplified version of the animation panel if I need to make like small adjustments, if I need to like move them back and forth or just, But if I want the full power, then I will press Edit in Animation Window, I jump to the animation, I make my changes, and I go back to the timeline. You don't even need to save. It's all passed back and forth. So yeah, I have the animation of the opening, the mouse jumps in, looks around. I'm going to add, let me play it just a little bit, just to show you where we got. So I'm moving the camera. I can move around. I can press Y, and then he opens the chest, jumps in. I can still move the camera and look around. He does this cute animation. He comes out and the chest closes. So another thing I can control, as I said, is sound. So I'm going to add an audio track, and I'm going to select the default mixer of the project. And then I can add, the same way as I did for animations, I can add audio from audio clips. And this was, well, yes, chest enter. And add from audio clip, chest exit. So I have 2 clips. I can place them where I want. The problem here is, as you see, when he starts to open, if I set the clip here, it's too long, because as he finishes, I'm midway through the audio clip. So one thing I can do is I select the clip, and here in the speed multiplier, I select 2. And I'm going to do the same for the exit one, because I already know it's too long. Then I adjust it on the exit, so as soon as the lead starts moving, I play the sound. And unfortunately, you can't preview sounds as you're scrubbing through the timeline in stop mode, so you need to play. So let's see if I can. Yeah, I have sound. I press Y. And it plays the sound, the opening sound, and the exit sound. And again, you can blend sounds together just by clashing clips one on top of the other. You can have here is in and is out, so you can also create like fades. And one thing I didn't show you is you can have these blend curves. So by default, the curves are like just a smooth blend into the other, but you can adjust the curve. If you're used to that, you can just go in and, well, this is already blended, but. This is muted, whatever. I know what is going on. Yeah. So yeah, you can select like custom blending curves, using the classic curve editor, so you can save them and recycle them in other clips and so on. Let me put it back to where it was before. I'm using a very low resolution screen, so the interface looks a bit cluttered, but it's better because it's bigger on the projector. So now that I added the sound, I'm going to add the last track. And the last track is basically a Cinemachine track. So it's a custom track that's already been made for you. As you can see, I have let's call them the default native tracks here. Activation. And activation is just to turn objects on and off. Animation to use clips or to create keys by hand, as we've done with the lead. Then we have audio, control, playable. And then here you have like the custom ones. So we have Cinemachine, and then the Unity also comes with like a simple custom track, which is an example. So you can look into the code and modify it and create your own tracks and clips. So let's create a Cinemachine track. I create it, and I have to pass as the parameter the brain. So I pass the main camera, and Unity will know that it has to animate, it has to act on that camera and Cinemachine brain. And then here I can add shots, camera shots, as if they were clips, animation clips. So I'm going to add a new one. And as you can see, it creates a clip, but currently it has no camera. If you see here the parameter, it says virtual camera none. So I'm going to create a new shot. And what I want is I want a camera that looks at the mouse a little bit from above when he's in the chest, and it's a bit of a close-up. So I see the animation where he's like hiding really well. So I'm going to go to Cinemachine, create virtual camera. Before we used free look, now I'm going to create a virtual one. And this one, I'm going to call it close-up camera. And I'm going to put it into this object just for tidying things up. So as you can see, it's like kind of broken on the right. It's just looking on the floor. So I'm going to adjust it. I mean, I can move it around. Or, as usual, I can frame the action in the, this is a neat trick, I don't know if you know it. I frame the action the way I want, and I go to game object, align with view, and then the camera is going to be aligned with the view in the scene view. Okay? As you can see, now the camera is positioned here. Again, this is not a camera, this is a virtual camera, so the actual camera object is still this one, but the close-up camera is another Cinemachine camera that has a similar interface, simplified because it's just one shot, it's not the 3 rigs, but it still has the aim, the body, and the noise modules. It has all the camera parameters, like the field of view, and it has the look at and follow, as before. Now, I don't want this camera to be active by default, so I'm going to put this priority to less than 10, like 9 is enough. So the brain knows that by default, it has to get the free look rig, and not this one. But as I'm setting up this camera, I might want to take a look at it, so I can press this solo button to quickly go back and forth, so I see what the camera looks like. I can adjust it any way I want, like in the scene view, or I can adjust the field of view somehow. And then when I'm finished, I can just unpress the solo button and go back to the free look camera. So I have the shot ready, and I want to add it to the timeline, which lost focus again. So the clip that I created before, I just dragged the close-up camera to the slot. Now it's connected to the clip. So this means that as the timeline plays, I'm going to go from the free look camera that has the highest priority to the close-up shot in this part here, and then back again to the free look camera. And for this close-up shot, as you can see, as I select the clip, I also have the properties here, which is handy, so I don't have to select the object again. And I want to frame the mouse, and I want to look at his eye. So, yeah, I'm going to use the look at. I'm going to look at the right eye bone. So now the camera is following him. And now you can see the Cinemachine thing, because as I go in here, you see the camera is trying to follow the eye. And if I enable the, actually I'm on hard constraint. Or if I enable the composer, you see how as the eye moves out of the soft frame, the camera moves and tries to follow the action. If I make it smaller, then it's going to be more precise and more strict. But if I make it bigger, then it's going to be more loose, as if the camera operator is being like very sloppy, because maybe you want to make it like a French movie. So, are there any French in the? No, cool. Or an Italian movie. I don't know. I'm Italian, so I can take the blame. So we have this shot. The problem is, it's it's like directly, which is maybe something you want, but I want to blend seamlessly. So together with this fixed point of view shot, I want to add another shot, which is my free look rig. So I'm gonna create a new clip. I'm gonna shorten it somehow, and I'm gonna drag it to the beginning. And then I'm gonna also blend it. And for this one, I'm gonna use the free look camera. And I'm gonna duplicate it at the end of the timeline, and I'm going to blend it again somehow. Let's do like this. So now I have 3 clips, 3 Cinemachine clips, which blend into each other. The 2 at the sides are the free look camera, as you can see here, and the one in the middle is the close-up camera, fixed camera shot, which means that as I'm playing the game and I trigger this cutscene, I'm still in control of the camera, but then the camera will blend to this fixed point of view, plays the sequence, still by looking at the eye whenever he moves and stuff, and then it will blend again to the free look camera rig, which I was using, to the point of view that I was using before. So I get back to my gameplay the way I left it. Let's take a look. Right, so I'm this cute mouse, I can move around, I can go here, I can look, all around. I press Y, I can still look around, but then the camera will, well, it was a bit fast. The camera blends, you see I cannot move, and then it blends back to my free look rig. So if I'm for example, if I'm very low, I press Y, it blends to the fixed shot, and then as it goes out, it blends back to the low point of view that I was before. One last look. Now, he's scratching his butt. Now, I think for the timeline, for the demo, I'm done. I think I've covered everything I wanted to show you. There's much more to this because Cinemachine, as I said, is an asset that has been out for like quite a while, so it's quite developed. For example, other options that Cinemachine has is having, for example, in this case, right, if I'm looking through the crate, I basically compenetrate the chest, which is not really pretty good looking. But Cinemachine also has another component, I'm not going to demo it now, which is called, so as you can see, there's different components. There's one called Collider, and what it does is it has like it shoots like rays from the camera all around, and it looks for colliders, and it impedes the camera from going inside objects. So if you have a level geometry with colliders on the walls and floor and objects, then the camera will actively try to avoid these objects so it doesn't get inside. And you can also have, you can force the line of sight with the objects you're framing. So if you have a character, the character goes beyond the wall and then the camera moves behind an object. If the line of sight is lost, then Cinemachine will bring it out to keep the object into the frame, which is very useful for like third-person games with very tight environments. And then there are other cameras. You can, the way you set up Cinemachine, you can have cameras for every case. You can have a racing game where you have the camera behind the car, and as the car turns, you can tie the Cinemachine to the turning, and so the camera will frame instead of just the car. It will try to frame where the car is going, which is useful for a racing game. And again, you can have a free look rig and tie some noise to the bottom rig, so it creates some noise when you're near the road, or you can have a different aperture field of view. So if you open it, as the camera goes down, it will give you more of an impression of speed, because the stuff will like come into view faster. So there's like a lot of things that you can do. And another interesting one is this called Cloud, which is basically a cloud of cameras. Like you can have multiple shots, and then you ask Cinemachine to get one of them, and he will try to get the best one depending on the situation. So if a character is blocking one of the shots, then he will get another one. So you always get the action framed, no matter what's happening in your game, because obviously, if we were in a movie, then I could decide for the best shot, because everything always happens the same way. But that's what I'm saying, like we don't need to think of Timeline as a linear tool. You need to think of it as like, I'm playing, but there could be something happening in the background, and that something has to respond to what's going on the screen. So if the character is blocking one shot, then you need to get another camera. And this is like all possibilities that you have with this system, which, as I said, right now looks like a plugin that's been imported, but it's going to be integrated into Unity over the course of 2017, the 2017 version. And that's it, I guess. We covered everything. Yeah, the free look, the other thing maybe worth mentioning is, as you can see, it takes axes from the input. So I can always go to project settings, input, and mouse X and mouse Y are currently controlling the camera movement. I can adjust, for example, the sensitivity to have more sudden movements or not. And it's all like thankfully code free. So if you're not programmers, you can still like create these cutscenes, blend them with the gameplay, and then a programmer can create like extra tracks and clips. And once created, then they become accessible from this interface, and you can sequence them as if they were normal clips. Let's play one last time. So I move around, press Y. I'm still controlling, then I lose control of the camera, goes in. I'm keeping an eye on the camera on the eye, and then it blends out to normal gameplay again. And this is it for the demo. Do you have questions?
Thank you so much for this cool presentation with this mouse. It's so wow. And really, it's really useful for all the developers here. And I guess you have a lot of questions, right? So please raise your hand. There's one. Okay. And by the way, don't forget to rate this lecture in your app. You can do it anonymously or not, depends on you. So please give it 5 stars.
There's a bodyguard hiding behind the corner, ready to take away whoever asks about nested prefabs. So what's your question?
Thank you for your talk. Can we edit animator parameters in Timeline? Not directly play animations, but edit some parameters like character is freezing or ground is shaking and character will play some.
You can, but right now you need to script it. So you need to create like a custom track. I mean, like this one, like Cinemachine is kind of a custom track. So you create a custom track in code, and you define what the clip does. So you can say like, this clip, at the beginning it does this thing, and at the end it does this thing. Or you can have 2 parameters, and then it blends through them. And then, you can, then once you created this thing, you can use it on Timeline, and you can just create new tracks and wire in the properties that you want to control, which, as you said, it could be like the shaking of the ground, for example. So you can have a clip that accepts 2 values. One is the start shake, and one is the end shake. And then you will shake, or it might be 1 value. And then you can create different clips. And one has 1, one has 7, one has 0. You put them on Timeline, and then you can blend them together. But you need to, because it's a custom track, you need to code it with the playable API instructions.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, thank you for your demo. Maybe the standard question from the technical specialist. What about the performance issues, especially for mobile devices? Are there any known issues or some advices? What we shouldn't do to keep good performance?
No, you mean with Timeline and this stuff? Mm-hmm. No, I mean it's obviously classic things like the more you use, the more timelines you use, the more resources it needs. But there are no known issues like native issues, because in the end it's just it's just triggering stuff that maybe will normally happen in your game. So the timeline is just saying like animation play and sound play. Now, if in your game that sound gives you problems, then the timeline will give you problems. But it doesn't add like much overhead to what's happening. Obviously, Cinemachine is some kind of AI thing, but I mean the guy who developed it obviously looked for having it as much performing as possible.
So, for example, the noise feature for Cinemachine, it's not performant too.
No, I guess, I don't know how it works underneath, but I guess it just, has like some kind of noise generation, and then it reads the parameter of the noise, and then it moves the camera, like, it offsets the camera of a certain amount. But, that's not what usually bogs down games. Like, if you move the camera here or there, it doesn't make a difference. The problem is usually what the camera is framing and, what is rendering and stuff. But the movements are like, I guess Valentin will confirm, they're kind of free. It's like they don't add much to the computation, you know.
Okay.
Again, like maybe the computation is on which camera to use and where to move it, but the fact that it's moving is nothing.
And the other question is difficulty to integrate Cinemachine and to existence to solutions, for example, some FSM in a game that already exist. How difficult it
You
to
mean for
integrate?
some finished state machine?
Yeah. Thank you.
No, I mean the Cinemachine has like a set of instructions that you can call if you. So what's the idea? You're thinking of something like you have a finished state machine and then each one is a camera, is like a shot? No, like it might be. I haven't looked into the APIs too much, but you know, it's like as simple as like calling the Cinemachine brain, access the brain, and you just say like use this shot. So it's like a couple of lines basically. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your talk.
No worries.
As you said, Unity bought an integrated asset from an asset store. So do you guys have any plans to do the same for like maybe motion capture assets, or like, you know, create your own to complete the whole solution to, you know, like for cinematic stuff? Or at least maybe like Kinect. I mean, we know Unity and Microsoft are best buddies, so.
When you say Kinect, you said.
Yeah, Kinect, yes.
I don't know, because Kinect, is it still like?
Yeah, I mean, just for motion capture.
Yeah, no, I don't have any news in that direction, to be honest. I don't know if there's work going behind the scene that we don't know yet, because sometimes
So, like,
this partnership also happen in like one office, and but.
I mean, obviously, for people who are really like using this stuff heavily, like for creating like motion, I mean, like the whole cinematic stuff. Maybe not even games, just you know, using Unity for. It would be like just perfect solution, having motion capture built in, and the stuff you just showed us. It would just.
No, it's obviously, yeah, you're right. Like it would be a good thing to have an integrated solution. I guess it's just a matter of choosing which one, and because I guess there's like different technologies and standards as well of motion capture. So.
There are already assets that are pretty good. At least I know at least one. And
okay. No plans to buy one right now that I know.
Okay, thank you so much. If anyone has more questions, please meet Ciro after the lecture. So thank you very much. It was really nice. So let's give a round of applause.